Hello there, I'm Begadius. Welcome to my channel, my face, my voice, which actually kind of is, I mean, they're the same thing. How's it going, everyone? How are we doing today? I recently started doing like these opinion pieces on media that I like or dislike on this channel. I've talked a lot about video games and, you know, reviewing those, some albums, and I thought, you know what, I've just recently posted my first impression of a game that I consider to be a masterpiece in Alan Wake 2. So why don't I talk about a film that is a masterpiece? Why don't I do that? And then, just as I was thinking that, with perfect timing, a certain film absolutely swept up at the BAFTAs. I like the BAFTAs a bit more than other award ceremonies. It seems to be one of the only ones that does sort of go on the quality of the I don't want to say product, but you know what I mean, which is great, you know. And Oppenheimer absolutely tore everything apart. Oppenheimer, in my opinion, the greatest work that Nolan has ever produced. And Christopher Nolan is my favorite director of all time. I adore Christopher Nolan. I absolutely love his work. And this was his best film. Oppenheimer is an utter masterpiece. It is such a phenomenal film. And now I understand this is both a very popular and a slightly controversial opinion. I've seen people say things in the contrary to this. You know, I've seen a lot of people say that they find the film to be boring or, you know, uninteresting, and I kind of want to tackle that a little bit in this video because I want to present some notions and present to you why I think it's such an incredible film, and hopefully in doing so you could maybe go back to a subsequent viewing, which you should, because it's a very rewatchable film, with some fresh takes maybe, I don't know. And if you haven't seen the film, then you absolutely have to, though I will say going into this that there may be some minor spoilers here and there, so I do apologize about that. I'm going to try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, but it's very difficult to avoid something like that in such a story heavy film. However, all of this stuff happens. I won't worry too much about it. You should really know what happened anyway. Spoiler alert, he built the bomb. So yeah, obviously, you know, Oppenheimer is a 3-hour-long biopic about a guy building a bomb, not just any guy, J. Robert Oppenheimer, who created the bomb, who for all intents and purposes created the bomb that would, in the opinion of many, end the war, the Second World War, and in some, you know, it's a bit of a controversial, ambiguous thing. And that's one of the things I love so much about the film, is that that's exactly how they treat it. This is not a good or bad story. There's no antagonist, no protagonist versus antagonist sort of situation. That's not going to happen. And it isn't like that awful Bohemian Rhapsody film where it's like, it doesn't matter what he does, he's still a saint. No, they treat the film with the gravity that, you know, is required. But the most impressive thing to me in this film is the fact that this is a 3-hour-long biopic. And every second is utterly captivating. Every second of this film is captivating. It never drops. It never gets boring. And how the hell does it do that? You know, this, in my opinion, is the most well-edited film quite possibly that I've ever seen in my entire life. How did they do it? You know, how did they do this? Well, upon watching it, my opinion is that the way that they did that is by cutting off the fat, cutting off the corners. In this film, it is very focused on the bomb, but not just the bomb itself, the creation of the bomb, and what is entailed morally, and the steps that went in, and what followed afterwards. But what I think was a fantastic move and a brilliant step for Nolan here was that he doesn't focus on the fluff. He never, like, you know, with other films you may get this is what they were like growing up. Oh, he was always a prodigy, you know, he knew more than his friends and stuff like that. Now you get a couple of scenes of him in the lab, but every single second of this film is motivated and has some sort of narrative connection to the core of the narrative of the film. So everything that happens is motivated in some way that links to the bomb and the creation of the bomb, and why Oppenheimer would have approached the creation of the bomb in this way. And rather than using exhibitionism to tell you why he approached it as he did, like he was obsessed with the way that the catalysts happen in the universe, and, you know, pulling atoms apart, and he's obsessed with stuff like that, it's told through the means of introducing this character, which is done very quickly, but there's so much that lands on you by means of quick cuts and very sort of ferocious editing, and by keeping everything connected and every thread pointing into the middle to this one, core narrative event, the film becomes very focused and masterfully paced, absolutely masterfully, because you just basically cut from thing to thing to thing to thing that is important. There are things that, when I first came out of the film, I did think to myself, like, is it bad that was omitted? They talk a lot about how, they don't talk a lot about, sorry, they briefly mention how, Oppenheimer and his wife Kitty, they were bad parents, and they do cover that for around about 2 or 3 minutes, and then they move away from it. And I think, is it okay that they're omitting how much of a deadbeat dad that he is? And then it dawned on me that it's like, that's not the point. That's not the point of this film. They create that position for you as a narrative thread to the bomb, because it's like, after the film they tackle a lot of sort of themes of, was he a good person? Was he morally in check? Was he trying to do good? Was he intentionally trying to sort of become famous off of this? What was he doing? How greedy was he in this situation? And that's just a piece of the puzzle. They don't need to focus on that for half an hour, him being a deadbeat dad. We don't need to get scenes of him crying in his bed because he had to give his kid away. We don't need these scenes, because we have what we need from the scene. We have the piece. We have the piece of the puzzle, and it's gone in and it's connected, and now we can move on. And in approaching a narrative like that, you're able to just create a film that is just wholly focused. And that is why 3 hours just flies by, because you spend the 3 hours focusing on things that matter. You don't get that drop where it's like, oh, here's the scene where, oh look, they're just rolling around in the flower beds, and stuff like that. Ironically, unlike The Dark Knight Rises by Nolan, where there are a lot of scenes of like, chit chat and oh, should I do it? Should I? And crying to Michael Caine and stuff like that. And all of that fat is cut off in this film, and it flies by. And everything else is just tremendous. I mean, there's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in my entire life. Ludwig Göransson, I believe. Absolutely stunning soundtrack. Can You Hear the Music is one of the best pieces of music I've ever heard, like ever in my entire life. The strings are so heavy on it. The cinematography is fantastic. Like I said, the editing overall is just great. There isn't a bad performance in the damn thing. Everyone is just absolutely on their game. Even Josh Peck didn't. Okay, like, it was weird seeing Josh from Drake and Josh every now and then in a film with such gravity, but it didn't affect me. Overall it was absolutely fine. But the whole thing just flies by. It's just immaculately crafted. I have very rarely seen a better example of just filmmaking, a better lesson in filmmaking than this film. Every now and then, if you're into it, then you'll see a movie and you go, oh my god, that was a lesson in filmmaking. That movies like Moonlight come to mind, in terms of cinematography, and this is one of them. It's an absolutely, you had to see the film. Just please see the film, because Oppenheimer is a masterpiece. Easily a masterpiece. It's phenomenal.
The PlayStation is only $149, and you can also get leading titles.